KetoneIQ has always been used as like the sports drink, the performance drink, the fuel all these athletes need. For the first time ever, we looked at ketones and anaerobic because for the longest time, we always thought ketones are always associated with aerobic exercises or endurance exercise. However, in this study that was published, the results came out were very, very impressive because we are looking at improved average power, improved peak power, improved cadence, and decreased fatigue index. So not only they are pushing harder, they're also pushing faster because the cadence also improved. Another interesting study that is also revolving around oxygen, looking at KetoneIQ, just one dose in heart failure patients, they managed to improve the cardiac output, the stroke volume, and the ejection fraction, all of which are really important clinical outcomes that improve their survivability of these patients.
And we are live. Dr. Latt, how are you, sir?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Good, man. Good. I had you on a podcast, but I was trying to think when the last time was. It's been over a year now, right? 2 years?
I think about 2 years now. Because it was right before I started hosting the HVMN podcast, and I hosted it for about a year and a half, and then took a break in the past year. So,
is that podcast still going?
No, it hasn't been going for a while now. I think for about 6-7 months now, because I have been focusing my efforts on grant applications and research collaborations to really push the science forward. Because while I was doing that every week, because we were releasing an episode every week, I got very little bandwidth to really expand the science. So now we're actually seeing a lot more collaborations, a lot more researchers who are interested in using KetoneIQ to treat certain diseases as well as increasing performance.
Nice. Well, I definitely want to dive into the collaborations, man. But with us having talked 2 years ago now, I'm sure there's a lot of new science in the realm of exogenous ketone supplementation.
Yeah, I think 2 years ago we were just covering the keto 101, right? You were, obviously you were very well versed in the keto diet, and we're just talking the differences between like exogenous ketones and endogenous ketones. So here I think we can do a little bit more of a deeper dive on what's new, right? And I'm going to take a KetoneIQ shot. I need it in the middle of the day.
I feel like I meant to actually drink some before this episode. I normally have a sip, like I've got like a 60 ml shot that I'll take before I record an episode. But I've changed my studio setup, so all my stuff's different. So I sat down in the chair earlier than I normally do, and I totally forgot my shot of ketones, man. So if
feel free to go take it. I mean, we can always edit it,
I might have to, man. I might have to.
Yeah.
So let's roll up our sleeves, man. With the science, like with all the new and upcoming science and just everything that's elapsed over the last 2 years, what has changed? What has been learned? What has shifted since our last recording?
Okay, let's focus first on the performance, because I think KetoneIQ has always been used as like the sports drink, the performance drink, the fuel that all these athletes need. So the two main papers, or one paper that has been out, the other one we are just wrapping up and about to submit end of this month, are mainly focusing around performance, athletic performance. So the paper with University of North Georgia was out in January. That was looking at anaerobic exercise. So for the first time ever, we looked at ketones and anaerobic, because for the longest time, we always thought ketones are always associated with aerobic exercises or endurance exercise, because it is derived from fatty acids, and fatty acids get converted into beta-hydroxybutyrate, which is ketones in your liver. So for the longest time, we thought, okay, fatty acid is better for endurance, glucose is better for anaerobic exercises, because there's a high intensity anaerobic exercise, you need glycolysis, which is oxygen independent, you get a fast ATP production. However, in this study that was published, what we have seen is that these people, they are not keto adapted people. They have had a standard breakfast that we give them. They have glycogen stores, and we just give them KetoneIQ. And at the end of a 5K run, they jump straight onto a bike, a stationary bike, and we make them do a Wingate test. Mm-hmm. So they have to push as fast as they could, as hard as they could for 10 seconds, and then rest for 30 seconds, and then do that for 5 times. And the results came out were very, very impressive, because we're looking at improved average power, improved peak power, improved cadence, and decrease fatigue index. So not only they are pushing harder, they're also pushing faster because the cadence also improved. And then they feel less fatigued at the end of it. So that to us is a very novel finding that a lot of us didn't expect, because if we look at the RER, which is the respiratory exchange ratio, they are still burning more glucose than fat. They're still above 1, but they are significantly lower than those who are in placebo. So we're pushing it towards fat, which technically would make them do worse, but they're doing better. So what we think it is happening is the effect of ketone IQ on the brain. Similar to that of a caffeine effect, where it numbs your pain during that anaerobic exercise. So it's a sort of analgesic effect, so that they feel less pain in the localized muscle area where you are exerting force for the anaerobic exercise.
So like what from like a lactic acid standpoint, like were there any tests done on, lactic acid levels and any shifts between the ketone IQ group and the placebo?
I wish we did, but we didn't do any muscle biopsies to sort of reduce the invasion, the invasive techniques, and making sure that we get past quickly on the ethics and make sure we get the study up and running quickly. But there are studies in the past that showed with ketones, exogenous ketones, lactic acid buildup was decreased, but that was in endurance exercise. So it would be very interesting to see what difference would it make in anaerobic high intensity exercises where lactic acid build up really quickly and then they dissipate very quickly as well as you get oxygen in.
Yeah, because I feel like from my experience, having been keto adapted, fat adapted for over a decade now, my MCT transporters are in greater abundance, which clear pyruvate and lactate. So I don't have near the burning sensation that I used to before adopting a ketogenic diet. But I would be curious to see what happens for, acute settings in individuals that are not deeply adapted.
Yeah, I mean, we have seen the upregulation of MCT transporters or monocarboxylase transporters when people have taken ketones. So it's definitely upregulated. Now, whether or not that upregulation of MCT affects the accumulation of lactate, that we don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what all markers were tested for with this test specifically?
That was purely on the performance level. It wasn't, I don't believe we tested any markers apart from blood glucose, blood ketones.
Gotcha. When are we going to have a test with like resistance trained athletes? That's what I'm really curious to see.
Ooh, that would be super cool. That's the problem though, like because of the conventional understanding of metabolism that a lot of researchers don't believe this result, right? So even like getting it published, we had so many reviewers just say like it's not enough or like it's not convincing enough. But I'm like, this is what the data shows. I mean, we HVMN, even though we sponsored the study, we did not have any privy to the data. We were not involved in the data collection. We were not involved in data analysis. We were not involved even in the manuscript writing until the end. I think this paper now gives way to say, hey, like let's do a more comprehensive study that includes like resistance training athletes, and we could potentially even include keto adapted athletes versus non-keto adapted athletes. It's just finding funding and the institution who is willing to do that.
Yeah, no, it's tricky, man. Like we've had there's been I think 2 keto brick studies done on my product, and like they'll ask for funds to help fund the study, so I'll quote unquote sponsor the study, but I'm not involved at all in the data collection or the publication whatsoever. Right. I'm just helping them meet the funds necessary to pay the powers that be. But yeah, studies. I mean, it's a crazy grind, man. Like it takes so long. It's hard to find good participants for it, especially if trying to find people that are actually fat adapted, because most of them are food survey studies, and who knows how accurate those are. Exactly. But I think there definitely needs to be more research around exogenous ketones and just ketosis in general for people that are in fact adapted, because from an athletic standpoint, so many of the performance-based studies out there are pulling, standard American diet consumers off the streets. They're not giving them any adaptation period whatsoever. So of course the studies are going to show a drop in performance.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you brought up how difficult it is to actually run a study and how long it takes. And I appreciate that, because a lot of people outside, they're like, oh, why don't you just run a study on this? Why don't you just run a study on that? I'm like, well, the funding, the facilities, the people, the human resource we need, the expertise we need on the techniques, the different assays that we need to run. And even after all the data collection is done, there's also like data analysis and manuscript writing. We just can't just like publish overnight. So that I think more people would need to understand the difficulty and the challenges that comes with running studies. And that's also why a lot of times we lag behind on evidence versus what's already commercial in the market, especially substances or supplements that are much less stricter being regulated than those who are strict, which are stricter being regulated than FDA by FDA.
Right.
And then the other paper that we are just about to wrap up is around EPO.
Wait, real quick before we go to that one. So
Yes.
this one that we just talked about, that has been published now.
That has been published. Huh?
When would that one go live?
That was January, like 2 months ago.
Yeah, you have to send me the link to that one.
Yeah, so what I'll do at the end, I'm going to send you a Notion doc. It has all the upcoming, current and upcoming publications. In that, I'll have all the links of all the studies that we are currently doing. If those who are which are completed, it will have a publication link, and those which are ongoing, it'll have the clinical trial gov link. In case if your audience somehow happen to be in that area and they're interested in joining that trial, hey, go sign up.
Totally, man. All right, so sorry to derail you there. What's the study that you all are currently wrapping up now?
So that one is around recovery, and we looked at EPO. Which is erythropoietin, which is a signaling molecule that increases red blood cells formation. And then we looked at angiogenesis, which is new blood vessels formation. And looking at all these biomarkers that comes with hypoxic adaptation. So a lot of athletes, they like to train in high altitude because that increases their own EPO production. When you increase EPO, you increase red blood cells. When you increase red blood cells, you increase oxygen delivery. And as we know, as we work out, we always need oxygen in order to create ATP. And in endurance exercise especially, the more oxygen you can deliver, actually in all exercise, the more oxygen that you can deliver, the higher the potential that you can reach. So that's why EPO was considered illegal, and blood doping, where people directly inject EPO into their body and get it to a supraphysiological level that increases risks of other side effects and possibly death. And that was why it was banned. But what we have seen in this study is that KetoneIQ can enhance your own endogenous EPO production, which means, yes, it is limited to your own genetic capacity and genetic potential, but nonetheless, it does increase it to a significant level where you get an advantage over the placebo group that did not have KetoneIQ. So that is a great show of not only the ability to increase EPO and delivery of oxygen, but that if you think about the application side of things, we are looking at multiple things, not just performance. We're looking at even hypoxic adaptation. So for divers, for hikers, for people who are, mountain climbers, you get that adaptation to hypoxia much quicker, and making sure that you reduce mountain sickness. There's also another paper that showed ketones reduce mountain sickness in high altitude as well. And then with regards to angiogenesis, we are looking at new blood vessels formation. So think about, you work out really hard. A lot of people also, always say that the recovery is as important, if not more important, than the workout itself, because you spend 1-2 hours working out, but you are spending the rest of the time after recovering and getting stronger and rebuilding your muscles, rebuilding your nervous system to make it more adaptable as well as more resilient to the stress that you're giving it every day. So the recovery has been shown to improve via angiogenesis markers. So we are making new blood vessels to deliver the increased red blood cells into the muscles. And that is really good thing, because now not only you are delivering oxygen into your muscles, you are also delivering the building blocks that you need in order to repair the muscles, the glucose, the amino acids, the proteins, and all those you need in order to recover well.
And is all of that, like, is the mechanism of action in both of those instances simply a result of increased beta hydroxybutyrate in circulation?
Yes, it is. It is increased beta hydroxybutyrate. And as a result of that, and KetoneIQ specifically uses R13-butanediol, which has been shown to have a vasodilation effect. And we can talk about that later in certain therapeutic disease where, certain disease where you have the lack of blood flow. Either it's via atherosclerosis, like vessel clogged up, and vasodilation is essentially helps with that blood flow. So that could be one reason also why the recovery is better, because you're getting better blood flow. And obviously, during exercise, that also could result in lower heart rate, lower blood pressure, as you are ramping up the intensity, which makes your perceived rate of exertion to be a little bit lower as well.
What did y'all measure to quantify the increase in dilation of the blood cells, or blood vessels, rather?
I believe it's the arterial blood flow they measured they measured the arterial blood flow, the blood pressure, and all of that. And then they also identified the inhibition of endothelin, which is a signaling molecule that constricts blood vessels. With ketones, it inhibits it. So it allows your blood vessel to relax and dilate.
And again, this is a result of increased beta hydroxybutyrate in circulation, or the 1,3-butanediol specifically before it converts?
So the study that showed the vasodilation of butanediol was independent of BHB. So we weren't able to really separate those, because when you take in butanediol, it automatically gets converted into BHB in the liver anyway. But obviously, you will have butanediol circulating in your blood, which could be the reason. But that is also accompanied by the increase in BHB. Now, it could very well that they work in tandem, causing the vasodilation, and then the BHB causing the rest of the signaling downstream effect, which will be the angiogenesis, the EPO, and all of that. Because EPO was also seen to improve without butanediol being involved.
And what is the dosage on these studies?
The study for the anaerobic study was 0.5 grams per kilogram of body weight, so that's quite high dose. For the recovery, it was a little bit lower. It's 0.3 grams per kilogram of body weight.
Gotcha. And the so I'm just familiar with the little cap that comes with. I get the concentrate, so I'm typically taking 60 mils per serving, give or take, 45 to 60 mils. So what does that equate to in grams?
So which one did you get?
I'm getting, like, I've got those taller bottles.
Is it this one?
Yeah, those. So I guess it's not the concentrate. That is the dilution.
No, this is the 10 doses. This is, I mean, technically this is more concentrated than the shots, because it's 10 grams per 35 mil. And then the shots are 10 grams per 59 mil. Gotcha. So this one has 10 doses on it. So that will be equivalent. Say, how do you know how heavy you are in kilograms?
I can tell you how heavy I am in pounds. Let me do a little quick conversion here. So I'm 187 pounds, give or take. Let's see here. 187. It's 84 kilograms, 84.8.
So you would take 25 grams for recovery.
Grams. And so
2.5 doses
of the 60 mils.
So 35 would be 10 grams. So you would need 70 plus. Hold on.
I could just take 90 mils and call it good.
5 times 2.5. Yeah, 90 mils. Yeah, 87.5.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, sweet. Yeah, I'll up my dosage a little bit. Yeah, I think from a recovery standpoint, that's what I get excited about, man, because I think, I typically take it before a podcast from a mental clarity and cognition standpoint, but I think, it's not like a stimulus at all. So I don't really take it as a stimulatory agent necessarily, but I think from a recovery standpoint, post training. But I guess there's like a lag effect to it, so I could just as easily take it before a workout, and then it would still have the recovery benefits well afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. I would take it like half an hour before workout, and then I'll take it. So I'll work out at like 5 or 6 p.m. And then I'll take 2 doses before bed, just for that recovery as well. So feel free to top it up. And I would normally just take 1 shot, so way lower dose when I'm just sedentary and just using it for cognitive purposes. I feel that just 35 mil was enough for me to be focused and have that mental clarity. And as you said, it's not a stimulus. So when I take it for cognitive purposes, for podcasts, for example, it actually calms my brain down and make me able to say what I want to say in a coherent manner. Whereas if I have caffeine, it makes me jittery. So I may sound more hectic than I would normally.
Totally. So y'all are killing it from a marketing standpoint. I mean, y'all are like, I saw one of the team members of y'all was doing an interview with like Cameron Haynes, and he was shooting arrows off of the head.
Yeah.
I was going to.
That's our CEO.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you were able to come here for the in-person podcast, I was just going to offer the same thing for you. You know, I could just shoot one off of your head. Probably wouldn't be as accurate as Cam Haynes, so I wouldn't recommend it. But y'all are appealing to a pretty broad demographic of potential customers. Like, what are y'all really trying to hone in on? Like, what is the most common use case scenario, I guess?
The most common use case, the way I always say it, is any activity that use your brain. So pretty much anything, right? You use your brain for work, you use your brain for workout, you use your brain even when you're asleep, because you are consolidating all the memories, all the learnings throughout the day. So all those instances, KetoneIQ will be able to help you. But right now, for the honing in of the marketing point of view, is that we are trying to disrupt the 5-hour energy drink, the energy drinks market. Because a lot of people are laden with sugars and caffeine. And the problem with caffeine is that you do build up tolerance. And as you build up tolerance, you will just want more. You will just need more. And then not only that, when you are hooked on it, and you come off of it, you get the withdrawal effect. You get the headaches, you get the chronic tension headaches, which is not ideal, obviously, because now you are dependent on it. Ketones, on the other hand, you can go on and off. You can cycle it off and there is no side effect. And it does not build up tolerance, because even if I've taken it for 2 years, I can stop tomorrow and nothing will happen. Will I still get the sort of focus and benefit long term? We haven't got a long-term study to look at that yet, but my feeling that it does hold. Like, I genuinely feel that my memory recall has been better in the past 2 years, even on the days that I don't take ketones.
Yeah. And there's not really an upper threshold to it, right? There's not really a, LD50 dose to it, so to speak, is there?
So I was asked this question earlier today, actually, in another interview. With anything else, something is better doesn't mean that more is better. With metabolism, you want to always stick to that optimal zone. And I would always go for between 1 to 2.5 millimolar blood ketone levels. Now, when it comes to dosing it, right, I usually 2 to 3 doses will get me into that zone for a good 6 hours if I'm not working out. If I'm working out, it'll get me, into that zone for about 2 hours. I wouldn't take more than 3 at a time. Feel free to top it up, because we have had ultra endurance athletes who took 12 shots, so 12 doses in 22 hours, because she was running for that 22 hours. She was running for Badwater, and she took 12 shots in 22 hours, and that's fine. But do not take 12 shots in one seating, obviously.
Yeah.
I think that is not advisable. If you are, if you find yourself needing to dose more than 3 doses, I wouldn't take more than, 3 at a time, and then wait half an hour, top up whatever you need, and then top up later in the day if you need it.
Yeah, makes sense. Are you using are you checking your blood ketones throughout the day based off of your dosage, just to kind of see what it's doing to your millimolar range?
I did in the beginning. I did very consistently. And that's the beauty of exogenous ketones, because it's dose dependent. So once you know what dose gets you to what level, you basically don't need to check it anymore because it will be consistent every time. It's not affected by what you eat. It's not affected. It may be affected by your activity. So if you're working out, obviously it will drop quicker because you are using up the ketones, but it is not affected by your baseline physiological state.
Gotcha. Now,
Whereas keto diet is a bit hit or miss. If you have a bit of hidden carbs and whatnot, then it might kick you out of ketosis.
Right. So on that note, I think we probably touched on this briefly when the last time you were on the show, but kind of comparing use cases for those that are trying to tackle this from like a dual fuel standpoint and still consume relatively high carbohydrates versus those that are following a ketogenic diet and are, in ketosis by way of what they're consuming. How does the exogenous ketones impact those two groups differently?
I think for a lot of people who have been on ketosis, who have been on keto diet already, they find exogenous ketones to be useful to bridge into the keto diet whenever they're out. So it gets them into ketosis much faster, and then when the exogenous ketones wear off, they're already ready to burn their own ketones because it does lower blood glucose as well. So if they have a high glucose meal, they know that for sure their basal metabolic rate or their basal physiological state is not in ketosis. Then they take a shot, gets into ketosis, and then a few hours passes by, their blood glucose is already dropped, and then they go back into ketosis. For people who are not on ketogenic diet, they find the advantage is the fact that they don't have to go on a certain diet to have that benefit as well. So they still experience the cognitive clarity, the focus, as well as the glycogen sparing effect if they're doing exercise.
Yeah. Have there been any studies done, or maybe just even anecdotal experience of people that are diabetic, like type 1 diabetics using KetoneIQ? Like what is happening there? I mean, it's obviously dropping the glucose some, but like, would they be able to feasibly reduce their insulin requirements?
So not type 1. So I believe the study was on type 2 diabetic, and that was done by University of British Columbia, Dr. Jonathan Little. So he has looked into the glucose lowering effect of ketones in obese patients, in healthy patients, in diabetic patients. And what they have seen is that after food and then take ketones, their blood level drops up to like 50 points in the US unit. And that is significant. So type 1, I don't know what sort of difference that would make. For the type 2 diabetic study, they didn't see any change in insulin. Now, mind you, that is also a very short study. I believe right now they're running a 3-month study to look at the chronic effects, because as we know, like, our bodies will take time to adapt to that, right? Even though our blood glucose spikes and drops and highs and lows at all times, depending on what we eat and what we do. But when it comes to insulin resistance, insulin sensitivity, that takes time for our body to readjust and recover. So I'll hope that because these people are not having as much glucose spikes throughout the day for 3 months, that we are going to see some form of reduction in insulin. And then that also shows the increase in insulin sensitivity in muscle cells. I think that would be the ideal outcome of a study that I would definitely be rooting for.
Yeah, this is super interesting. I've got an employee that's type 1 diabetic, and I've recently convinced him to switch over to a ketogenic diet. So he's been doing that for about 2 weeks now. But at the same time, his pharmacy put him on a different insulin. So just a ton of variables. But I was having him use some of the exogenous ketones post-prandial after his lunch meal, and he noticed that it didn't have near the spike that it was having previously.
Yep.
So I'm kind of curious to see how all that plays out through some more manipulation. But I think there could definitely be a use case scenario there.
That is exactly what they experienced in the study. There was no spike, and in fact, it just dropped. However, you have to be a bit careful because of the drop in blood glucose. For type 1, they are unable to produce insulin. So that's a very different case to type 2, where you're trying to reduce insulin because they already have high insulin, and you want to increase the insulin sensitivity in the muscles. Whereas for type 1, they already do not have insulin to begin with. So if there's any sharp drop in blood glucose, there is no way to regulate it internally unless you just take in more glucose externally.
Yeah, and I don't think, I mean, it didn't drop his drastically, but if he's able to just get that dialed in so that his insulin requirements are at least somewhat mitigated, so he's not having as much of it, I think that would be a huge win as well. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously with the type 1, they're probably still gonna have to take some exogenous insulin in some form or fashion, but
Of
like
course.
just reducing that dosage, I think would make a meaningful difference long term.
Yeah, especially with healthcare these days are so expensive, like it's no kidding. Like, a lot of people are suffering because they don't get their insulin dosing, and people can die from it, right? And you know who you should follow, who is type 1 diabetic and a scientist, Dr. Andrew Kutnick. He's a good friend, brilliant scientist. He always talks, he's passionate about type 1 diabetic and different ways to live healthily, and he's jacked, and he also uses keto diet, so follow him, and he, I'm happy to introduce him to you as well if you want to learn more about type 1 diabetic and ketogenic diet.
Yeah, I've had him. I don't think I've had him on the podcast. I've talked with him, I think, online, or somebody was telling me about him. I follow him, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, I'd love to get him on the show for sure.
Yeah.
So what about the relationship with the 1,3-butanediol and I guess alcohol? I mean, it's not an ethanol, but it has similar properties to like alcohol in a sense, right?
So this is a topic that was brought up a lot when we first launched, right? Our competitors would say, "Oh, this is alcohol, like this is unhealthy." But then over time, we now see that it is being metabolized very differently than alcohol, and it does not have the same effect as alcohol. And in fact, a lot of our Olympics athletes are using KetoneIQ for performance. And if it does exert the same effects of alcohol, there is no way they're going to jeopardize their entire career using KetoneIQ. So I think this goes back to what I said earlier. Just because something is good doesn't mean that you need to take more of it. So that's where people overdose and get too much at one time, and you may get that oozy feeling. But even then, you don't really necessarily replicate the entire effect of ethanol on your system. So
yeah, I mean, just the fact that this has been shown to be a vasodilator, whereas alcohol is a vasoconstrictor, like that alone, from a performance standpoint, shows that they're pretty different in how they respond in the body.
Exactly.
Would you pop on a breathalyzer test if you're pulled over after downing a whole bunch of ketone?
I don't think so. I don't think that would. Yeah, it'll be interesting. You should try it.
Just try it, like just speed around a little bit and down a bunch of ketone IQ.
Or just buy a breathalyzer and then have a bunch of ketones and then breathe into it and see what happens.
There you go. I'm gonna have to do that test for sure. Well, what's the next study in the pipeline, man? So you're wrapping up that one now. What's next in the queue?
The next in the queue, we are actually applying for quite a few grants, and a few grants are in review at the moment. One of which is with NIH and collaborating with Johns Hopkins University, looking at sleep apnea. So obstructive sleep apnea, where your airways are blocked in one way or another during sleep, and because of that, your body is getting less oxygen. And again, we're coming back to the oxygen. It seems like ketone does improve oxygenation in a lot of ways. So this is when you're sleeping and you have decreased oxygen delivered to your body, and as time passes, you are increasing your risk of cardiovascular disease, obesity, and even mortality. So that is obstructive sleep apnea. And a lot of people, I believe up to 1 billion people are affected by it over in the world. Before I misspeak, let me double check that number.
It sounds right, but yeah, I don't want to misquote you.
Yeah, 1 billion people. Yeah. 1 billion people, so essentially 1 in 8 are affected by obstructive sleep apnea in the world. So it is more common than people think. And most people who have sleep apnea, they also snore. However, if you do snore, you don't necessarily have sleep apnea. But if you have sleep apnea, most probably you will snore. And we are running the study with Dr. Jonathan June, looking at using ketone IQ as a way to increase their oxygen saturation and increase their sensitivity to carbon dioxide, so that they can the body can adjust to improve their symptoms. So previously they published a paper using just ketogenic diet, and then they were curious whether whether if it is the diet itself or is it the ketones, and that's why they decided to work with us to really isolate the diet versus just butanediol or beta hydroxybutyrate to look at the effect of it on sleep apnea. So fingers crossed.
Interesting. I was at a conference, I guess earlier last year, and I forget the speaker, but he was talking about improving sleep quality, and how a simple technique people can do is just simply open their bedroom doors or a window as they sleep. Because if everything's enclosed in your bedroom and you're just constantly exhaling through the night, the carbon dioxide builds up, and that massively downregulates overall sleep quality. So if you open that up, get better oxygen, and you pair that with, the exogenous ketones to improve oxygenation all the more, that makes total sense to me.
Yeah, for sure. And then another interesting study that is also revolving around oxygen is a collaboration with Duke University, heart failure. And we are running an 8-week study, putting about 20 heart failure patients on KetoneIQ. And this is also very similar to a study we're having in Denmark with Aarhus University. That study is shorter, it's 30 days, but we're running it on 250 heart failure patients. So that is already ongoing. And what we have seen so far, and this Denmark group even published a paper on the 24th of December last year, just Christmas Eve, looking at KetoneIQ, just one dose in heart failure patients. They managed to improve the cardiac output, the stroke volume, and the ejection fraction, all of which are really important clinical outcomes that improve their survivability of these patients.
Interesting.
So think about what we talked about: vasodilation, improve oxygen delivery. And now we're talking about heart failure patients who essentially they may or may not have had a heart attack before. They have some form of dysfunction that stops the heart from functioning properly. Either it's reduced blood flow, or some cardiomyocytes being damaged during a heart attack. But now with ketones, you have a more efficient feel. You have vasodilation, increased blood flow, increased oxygen, increased delivery of substrates and repair materials, and they are improving.
Interesting. This may be just wishful thinking on my part, but are there any things in the works for studies around patients with Alzheimer's and dementia as far as exogenous ketones is concerned?
Yes, I do believe there has been going on for a while now. I believe like when I first joined HVMN in 2019, there were already a study funded by the NIH using exogenous ketones on Alzheimer's and dementia. We currently don't have anything specifically, or we have a grant with the Naval Health Research Center looking at traumatic brain injury, which also increases your risk of developing Alzheimer's and neurodegenerative diseases later on in life. But specifically Alzheimer's, not yet. I am going to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to speak with a group that is specialized in neuroscience and University of Pittsburgh, and they are interested in collaborating. So potentially we're looking at some form of brain research going on there and applying for grants, which will sort of support more studies around neurodegenerative diseases.
Because I feel like, this hits home for me, and I'm sure many others. I've got grandparents that are starting to show signs of Alzheimer's and dementia, and it's like, I know they would benefit immensely from just adopting a ketogenic diet, removing the excessive sugar and lack of proteins and quality fats in their food. But like getting people that are in their elder years to adopt a totally different lifestyle is like nearly impossible, it seems. Whereas if they could just simply consume an exogenous ketone, that could bridge that gap a bit easier for them, because ketones can cross the blood-brain barrier. They can provide that energy for, neural tissue. I feel like that would be a very easy win for them, low-hanging fruit. So that those studies really interest me for sure.
Yeah, well, for sure, absolutely. And I think there's also the challenge of like sticking to a keto diet, right? So if you can pair that with a intermittent keto diet with exogenous ketones, that gives them a little bit of flexibility because, I have the same problems. Like my mom shows some signs and she's only 70. And I'm like, please take your ketones because it does work.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%, man. Well, what about you personally? What's got you excited outside of the studies of which you have multiple that you're working on?
Yeah, I've got multiple. And we've got even cancer studies actually. That is very different mechanistically to what we've talked about in terms of like the oxygen delivery and all of that. They are very different mechanism of actions which affect specific cancers. So with UPenn, we're looking at colorectal cancer, and then with Stanford, we're looking at lymphoma and leukemia. So that's another collaboration that we're working on. But for me personally, I've been going through my own transformation in the past year. In 2023, I was weighing 185 pounds. Now I'm around 165 pounds, so 20 pounds. But I also measured my muscle mass throughout the year. I lost about 26 pounds of fat and I gained a little bit of muscle, which I was, you know what, I'll take that rather than losing any muscle. Even if it was 1 pound, I'm fine with that because having been on a calorie deficit for most of the time in the past year, because I'm doing carb cycling and managing to lose all that body fat and maintain muscle, I'll take that as a win anytime.
Dr. Latt's getting jacked, man. I like it.
Well, the jacked part is hopefully later. So I'm training with Jay Ferrugia. I don't know if you know him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm training with Jay, and he's like, no, we need to get you like lean enough before we do a reverse diet and get you jacked. I was like, so I'm still waiting for the jack part, but I'm definitely lean enough. Well, leaner than I was, and I never thought I could because I'm hitting 40 this year, right? So I'm like, great, like, where does my metabolism stand? And one good thing about me growing up unhealthily, so I grew up overweight. One of the good thing is that I never knew what peak was. Whereas a lot of people who peaked in high school and they were like the football jocks or like the sportsmen, they knew what it feels like to be at their peak, and they feel like, oh, I'm not as I used to be. Whereas for me now, I'm fitter than I've ever been, so it feels good because I'm like discovering new heights rather than trying to get to my past height.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. I feel like so many people relive their glory days from high school and college. And it's just like, to me, that's just a depressing way to live. Like if I'm past that time, that chapter in my life, and I just constantly reminisce on that as that being my prime, like that's sad. Whereas now, like I legitimately feel and look and perform better with every year that passes. I mean, this is the freaking fountain of youth right here, man.
Yeah, absolutely. You said it perfectly. It literally, you create your own peak whenever you want.
Yeah, 100%. So with you dieting down, losing all that fat, I'm assuming you're, obviously dropping your intake, eating a little bit of a deficit. Did you notice that the exogenous ketones had much of an effect from a satiety standpoint?
Yes, absolutely, especially at night. So I'll have my dinner around 8 or 9, which is quite late already, but I sleep around like midnight, and by that time I'm already hungry. So because I use ketones for my sleep recovery, not necessarily from a appetite suppression standpoint, but it works very well complementary to the appetite suppression standpoint, because at that point I'm already hungry. And I'm going to take ketones anyway, so that stopped me being hungry, and it improved my sleep, my sleep quality.
So how soon after your dinner meal at 8 or 9 would you have the exogenous ketones?
I would have it right before bed.
Okay, so still having it right before bed. Interesting.
Yeah, so I don't have it. I don't have it with my dinner. I don't have it like post exercise. Even though the study that showed improvement in recovery, they have it half an hour post exercise and half an hour before bed. I only do the before bed part because usually, like you said, you'll have a delayed effect. So I'll have it before my workout. So I'll still have ketones in my body. And because I work out in the evening, the window is much smaller anyway. So I don't need to top up that often. So I'm just going to do before workout at 5 or 6, and then I'll do it before bed at 12.
Interesting. Do you fall asleep pretty quickly, or
Yeah.
does working out in the evening kind of hinder that?
Nope, I have no problem falling asleep. I love my sleep, and I think it's a lot to do with my life. Living in all these different places and traveling a lot. So I've trained my body to be able to sleep in any condition, including like on flights and on buses. Heck, I've slept in a club before when I was in my undergrad. I
Yeah.
was just tired. I took a chair, leaned it against the wall, and literally fell asleep for half an hour. And then the bouncer came and woke me up. Thought I was on something. I was like, no, I was just asleep.
Yeah. It's not a bad thing, man. Being able to sleep at the ready is probably a superpower, honestly.
Yeah, I know.
Well, that's
So
awesome, man. Kudos to you for dropping the body fat. And when do you start reverse dieting and actually focusing on the muscle building then?
well, according to Jay, when my fat percentage gets a little bit lower than I am now, so anytime soon.
Nice.
But because I went back to Malaysia for 2 weeks and a half in during the Lunar New Year, end of February, early February, so that travel really screwed me over because my sleeping, my nutrition, and everything was not consistent. So I came back and I probably gained some more fat. So now I have to like get back to consistent. But then I'm going on a podcast tour, So heck, that's the challenge of us who wants to be consistent. You always end up doing something that forces you to not be consistent.
Yeah, it's tough, man. I mean, I've got a lot of clients that are, busy traveling or whatever the case may be, but it's all just a matter of like what you want to prioritize. I mean, you can make it work nutritionally speaking, no matter where you're at. So you can find a gym.
Yep.
It definitely is harder when you're traveling, but you can
I
certainly
think
make it happen.
the gym part is the easiest because especially if you're traveling in the US, like I can always find a gym and have a guest pass and whatever. I think and even nutrition could be easy. I could rent an Airbnb where I can actually cook, so that way I can measure and count my macros. The hardest part for me would be the sleep, and sleep affects my weight so much, much
Mhm.
more than nutrition and my workout. Because I realize on days that I do not sleep well, it either goes up or stays the same,
Yeah.
even at a calorie deficit. Either I'm bloated with water, retention, or whatever. I don't know, but it certainly affects my weight loss significantly, much more than my workout and my nutrition.
Yeah, I mean, so much of lack of sleep is just going to be an increase of stress and cortisol, and that's obviously going to increase fluid retention as well. I mean, if I get a good night's sleep, I'll literally wake up 2 or 3 pounds lighter with nothing else changing to my nutrition.
Yeah.
So, 100%, man. Well, shoot, next time we do a podcast, you'll definitely have to come here in person. We'll get a lift in.
Yeah, 100%. Like I would love to, pick your brains on like different techniques and different routines, like what sort of cycles, of how you do your lifting days, and what are the benefits of like upper body, lower body versus push pull leg versus bro split or whatever, all that stuff.
Yeah, 100%, man. We'll do that for sure. I'm getting actually just ordered some new equipment from my gym this morning, so it's just getting all the better. Getting it ready for you when you come.
Sounds like if I go there, I have to be there at least for 2 days.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
All right.
Awesome, brother. Well, Dr. Latt, I appreciate it. Pleasure as always. Where do people go to find out more about you, the studies? We'll put the studies in the show notes, but
Yep.
The website, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So if you go to ketone.com, that's where you can find everything about KetoneIQ, including the science page. If you want to follow me at Latt Mansor, LattMansor, on all social media. And yeah, if you have any questions, DM me, email me, latt@ketone.com, and we'll speak.
Awesome. Appreciate it, brother. Pleasure as always, man.
Thank you.
Take care.